Did you hear about the pregnant woman who was found murdered in the trunk of her car? And the police had no idea if the killer was her ex or his brother. 26-year-old Susan Abrosino went missing from New York in 2005. At the time, she had an 8-year-old daughter at home waiting for her, so her family knew she couldn't have just run off. As police investigated, they learned that Susan had married a man named Keith Abrosino back in 1997, and they had moved to Colorado because Keith was in the Army. There, they gave birth to a daughter named Taylor, but in 1999, the two divorced. Susan and her daughter moved back to New York to be closer to family, while Keith stayed behind in Colorado. Once Susan and her daughter Taylor settled back into New York, they found an unlikely companion step into their lives. Her ex-husband's brother, Stephen, will often check up on them, make sure they had food, and make sure they were safe. Susan's daughter said that Stephen became like a father figure to her, and she remembered seeing him more than she saw her own father. By 2004, Keith decides he wants to move back to New York because he wants his family back, but then he realized that someone was standing in the way. Keith found out that his brother Stephen had basically taken over his role as Taylor's dad, and he became angry about that, and the two brothers became enemies. A year later, Susan called a meeting between both Keith and Stephen. She wants to talk to them because she says she has information that will change their lives forever. Susan meets Stephen at a pizza place, and he says she left before he could leave, but Keith said she never showed up to their meeting. Hours after her meeting ended, her family began to wonder where she was because she never came home. After police began their search, they found her purse in a vacant lot about 6 miles from her home. And then they found her car nearby with bloodstains on the passenger seat. And when they opened Susan's trunk, they found her dead body. She had been shot in the head. The news of Susan's murder was even more devastating for her family because Susan was pregnant. The father of her child? Well, it wasn't her ex-husband, Keith. She was pregnant by his brother, Stephen. Police learned that Stephen had told Susan that he didn't want her to keep the baby because his current girlfriend was also pregnant. Susan kept telling Stephen that she couldn't hold it in anymore. She needed to come clean and tell Keith that she was pregnant by his brother. She waited as long as she could, and then she turned up dead. Stephen had killed Susan because he didn't want her to have his baby. And on the first day of his trial, he pled guilty to manslaughter, and he got 30 years in prison. What do you think of this story? Leave a comment to let me know. I'm Te-Erika with the T. Follow for more.